Hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and this is the IS-2 model I won recently at my local tournament, so I'll get the thing built up in the video today. It is a 1:56 scale, Italeri manufactured, published by Warlord Games kit, and contains all of the usual stuff for bolt action, although that is the 2nd edition version still. However, there's an odd extra in here as well. Firstly, thank you Fred for packing my stuff. The smaller accessories are the V2 stat card, the transfer sheet and the smoke markers as usual. We have 2 sprues that will create the tank. These parts are generally quite well detailed and on par with many of the other Italeri kits, although I will point out that there is a lot of flashing on this particular example, which may be a sign that the tooling is wearing out, although I'm not 100% certain on that. But there are a few more sprues on top of just the tank, and that is because this kit includes some infantry models to make tank riders. It has a sprue of 8 Summer Soviet infantry, a weapons sprue so you can make them all with rifles, unfortunately 6 with submachine guns, but there's a variety of other weapons to make some interesting stuff for a little diorama. The kit also includes all of the bases for the infantry if you will be using them, as well as instructions for both the infantry and of course the tank, as you'd expect, as that is the main part of this kit. Let's get started with the tracks. Traditional for an Italeri kit, but this time the parts are quite a bit bigger and that makes them easier to work with. The drive sprocket and idler wheel get glued into place on the sides of the track assembly. The tracks themselves then go on in 4 pieces per side. The longer lengths have some tabs to securely fit them into the slots on the road wheels and return rollers, and the front and back pieces of track then pop into place. As I usually do with Italeri kits, I cut away the tabs that are supposed to help join the track pieces to each other, as the track pieces just always seem to line up better without them. We could put the track assemblies onto the hull tub at this point, but I'll be keeping them separate for painting. The hull tub itself has some pieces on the front and back. Some spare track links which have an unfortunate moulding mark that's visible on the upward side. This really should be on the reverse side where it wouldn't be visible in the final model. That's an unfortunate problem. There's also some tow hooks or lifting hooks that I'm pretty sure are supposed to point downwards like this. On the rear is some pretty similar lifting hooks and some more track links. Now I wanted to keep the hull tub and hull top separate for the moment, although I will be gluing it before I paint it. But to keep that how I wanted, I fitted the rear hull piece into place on the hull top. I held it temporarily on the hull tub so that it would all line up correctly when I came to assemble it later, but I made sure to put the glue in the right place so that it didn't stick down. The hull top has a whole bunch of tiny pieces, starting with something like a siren, I believe, or a horn, some tool loop thingies, possibly for towing, and what I think is supposed to be the headlight. The headlight unfortunately has a sink mark in the middle, and there are a few ways to deal with this, but I have found one of the easiest ways is to flood the lens with polystyrene cement, wait for that to dry, and as it goes on as a liquid it will form a smooth bubble that will dry to look like a glass lens. It usually works, and if it doesn't you can sand it flat and paint it like that instead. There is a little stowage box and a spade on the right hand side, this thing that I swear is a seesaw, as well as another stowage box on the left, and on the rear is the travel lock for the main gun. I really want at some point for a travel lock in a kit to actually be usable, but Italeri's kits usually don't have that option. I'll show here the external fuel tanks, although my process for this started quite a bit earlier in the build. These are made of 2 pieces and leave quite a bad seam line, and so I flooded the join with polystyrene cement, pressed the halves together and let that dry. This squeeze out of cement mostly fills up the gaps, and then once it's dry I can smooth that down, mostly, and it looks better than it would do otherwise. Of course, there are better ways of gap filling, but none quite so easy as this. The 4 tanks are interchangeable on this particular kit, and you can glue them into both the holes and against the hull side to make them nice and secure. This next part is my least favourite part of this whole kit. These towing cables are not ideal. They're looped around in such a way that the lower ends just kind of hang in the air awkwardly. I ended up gluing them in place and pulling up the lower end so that they were held against the hull rather than just suspended in space. If I had ever considered an aftermarket component for a model kit, it would be this one. Although I could also make tow cables from string or any of a dozen other methods as well. We now get to move on to the turret, and I'll mention again flashing in this kit being somewhat awkward occasionally, as the muzzle brake had flashing on the inside, and I ended up having to use a pin to scratch it out, and I got most of it, but it's not perfect, and then I glued the barrel to the mantle. Now there's all sorts of a contraption inside the turrets, supposed to let the gun elevate and depress. But as normal for Italeri kits, this mechanism is kind of weird, doesn't work, and I never really know how they designed it in the first place. Did anyone ever, test this before they sent it into the kit? It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. There's a bar with axles that goes onto the back of the mantle. Now if you sandwich the turret front in between these two parts when you glue them, in theory that should let it elevate. And it kinda sorta does, but the elevation doesn't really work how I wanted it to, and I quickly decided to flood the whole lot with cement to make sure that the gun doesn't drop out at some point in the future. The main body of the turret actually goes together really nicely. Each of the parts fit well, and there are overlaps to act as keying. The turret is a sturdy box when it is complete. I did get slightly confused at the turret front not fitting at first, but I quickly realised there's yet more flashing on the keying tabs that I hadn't noticed. So after I cleaned them away, the front went on nicely. But we aren't done yet. The turret needs all of its accessories, starting with a zillion lifting hooks, and I accidentally cut these all off of the sprue and mixed them up, which is a problem because there are a few different shapes for these hooks because the angled surfaces of the turret are different. Now, I ended up gooping them up with poly cement so that they stayed in place, even if they maybe don't sit quite at the right angle, but it's close enough, probably, I guess. Don't look too closely. A whole bundle of handles are quite iconic for the image of this particular turret, and they go into place next. However, again with flashing that I've mentioned, some of the holes being on join lines as well doesn't help. I had to open these out with a quick swizzle from the craft knife, and it's actually no big deal. And all of these handles ended up going on nice and securely. Now I'm intending to include a tank commander, but not the loader, so the loader's hatch can be shaved slightly to press this down into the closed position. The commander's cupola itself looks, well, odd, but it does fit onto its keying nice and securely, even though it looks like it's in the wrong place. But after I checked some photos of some museum pieces of this vehicle, nope, that is correct, that's exactly how it should be. The cupola has two half-size hatches that I left open, and a ED-SKaR heavy machine gun on the front. Speaking of machine guns, I nearly forgot the Degtyarev tanky gun for the turret's rear. Now, I mentioned I was using a tank commander, but not the one included in this kit. Rather, I'm going to use one of the upgrade sprue for tank commanders, and I'll show that next week when I paint up the model. So the reason I didn't glue the hull together is I wanted to put some magnets inside. And I made some magnetic tank riders a while back, and I tried a few positions to see how I wanted them to sit, and I settled on putting one at the back, and just for fun, one would be sitting on the turret. But with all that done, there is the tank built, and that's plenty of me talking for one video, so I'll concentrate on painting the kit for next week. If you'd like to see me build and paint the infantry as well, I do have some older videos painting the same models, but I'll be keeping these exact ones for the moment, as I might want them for specific kind of equipment or weapon loadouts when 3rd edition comes out in a few months. For now, I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.